come in game 2. Steph Curry and the crew stepped up, handled their business, blew out the Boston Celtics in game 2 of the NBA Finals. We got an NBA Finals series tied 1-1, heading back to Beantown. You know what that means, right? We got a lot to talk about. It's First Take in the house. Home of the NBA. That's right, I said it. And you'll see why in just a second. First Take's in the house. Let's go.
It's the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors in game 2 of the NBA Finals.
All of this power came from the pain. I put in twice the work, but I never complained.
Curry in his bag, got it! The Warriors starting to put together one of those prolific third quarters. Curry! Cooking! Launches! The Warriors have responded. They have flat out outworked the Boston Celtics.
Come alive on the night scene. We the A-team. A-team.
Speaking of A-Team, look at the crew I got today. And the Best Dressed Award goes to CJ McCollum. How we doing? So good to have you here with us.
I'm great. How you doing?
CJ.
Good. Stephen A., JJ, I'm Molly. How's everybody feeling? 2 games in the books.
Good morning, everybody.
I'm feeling great. It's going to be a series.
Good morning, everybody. Hope y'all well. Yes, sir.
Stephen A.,
Go ahead,
I just
JJ.
wanted to tell you, I still don't know what the exact definition of a pick'em series is, but I think you're spot on that this is going to be a back and forth series of adjustments. Like what I've seen so far in game 2,
Well,
I'm excited about the next 5 games. Excited.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, you're sitting in that seat. You know the responsibility that comes with it, with me being out. That's number one. Number 2, responsibility number 1 is not to lie to the American people because you know exactly what pick'em means, okay? You just explained it. And number 3, CJ McCollum. It's good to see you, my brother. It's good to see you, my man. Welcome to First Take.
It's good to see you too, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's
right.
great to have you with us.
Yeah.
All right, let's get it. So as we've all just said about 8 times now, we have a series. The Warriors even it up in the NBA Finals with a 107-88 win over the Celtics. Steph Curry scored 29 points. He held it down and then some, and so did Draymond on defense. Take a listen.
I think everybody played with more force. It wasn't just me on Jaylen Brown. It was across the board. If I just pick up my force and no one else does, it doesn't work. So that's a total team effort. Guys being ready to help when help is needed, and guys taking on the challenge at the point of attack. So, yes, I wanted to come out and be more aggressive on that side, and I think I did a good job of that. But that's a full team effort. It doesn't just work because of one guy. Our offense is always a lot of Steph. It all starts with Steph. Whether, when KD was here, our offense still started with Steph. And, that's the way it's going to be.
I mean, the Warriors in the third quarter, dangerous. Had their best quarter in NBA Finals history last night, and it happened in the third again, outscoring Boston by 21 points and doubled up the season shooting percentage. Curry had 14. He scored as many points as the Celtics did. S.A., I'll start with you. Do you think too much is being put on Steph Curry's shoulders right now?
Offensively, I do think that is the case. It was nice to see Jordan Poole get his game going, no doubt about that. But Klay Thompson shooting 4 of 19 from the field, I don't like that at all. I think we got to pay attention to the fact that this is who they're going against. They're going against an elite defensive team that has some offensive firepower of its own. This game was a 2-point game going into the third quarter. We understand, and somehow, inexplicably, the Boston Celtics continue to struggle in the third quarter, which is the one blemish on the otherwise illustrious performance of Coach Ime Udoka this season. But nevertheless, when you take into consideration what Steph Curry is being asked to do, yeah, you got him last night. You couldn't close the deal in game 1. This series is tied 1-1 going back to Boston. When I think about the Golden State Warriors winning this series in 7 games, which I picked them to do, I'm thinking about the fact that both Jordan Poole and Steph Curry, or Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, get it going. It can't be Steph Curry and such a huge discrepancy between Curry and the rest of the guys on the offensive end of the floor in order to win this series. I think you're going to need at least one other individual to step up in order to win 4 games in this particular series.
Stephen A., we've talked about this all the time with the great Warriors teams and how their role players star in their roles. And I thought in Game 1, Otto Porter Jr. was great. Iggy had a couple of nice moments. Kevon Looney has been great on the offensive boards. Jordan Poole, of course, with a nice Game 2 bounce-back game. But the idea that too much is being put on Steph Curry, I disagree with that, just because we are talking about one of the top 10 or 12 best players in the world ever. We're talking about a guy who's on his second or third max contract. This is who he is. The Warriors system is Steph Curry. Steph Curry is their system. And so much that happens on offense for them is based upon him in pick and rolls, his movement off the ball. They got a couple layups just on miscommunication last night because they were so concerned with Steph Curry. Going forward in this series, the adjustment the Celtics are going to have to choose about, have to make a decision on is how they're guarding Steph Curry in pick and rolls. They primarily played drop coverage. Through 3 quarters of Game 1, the Warriors scored about 1.9 points per possession on those possessions. Last night in the third quarter specifically, when he got it going, that was drop coverage in those pick and rolls. So if they decide to potentially blitz, if they decide to sort of have the big up in that coverage, then all of a sudden you get the backside 4-on-3 action that the Warriors are so good at. And that's where I think you can see more counting stats from some of their role players. But to your point about Klay Thompson, he absolutely has to be better throughout this series if they're going to win this series. Like, he's got to be that guy that scores efficiently, gives you 20 to 22 points a game, and he's really struggled. And give some of that credit to the Celtics defense. I think, primarily Jaylen Brown in Game 1, but throughout Game 2 as well, they are doing a great job of contesting his shots.
To follow with that, I agree with JJ. I think Steph Curry is who he is for a reason. There's a reason why he's making $45 million a year. There's a reason why he gets double teams, triple teams. There's a reason why Dre keeps bringing up the fact that he's the focal point of the offense. It revolves around him. He scores with the ball. He scores without the ball. Him and Jordan Poole are the only players who can manipulate a pick and roll and make a play for not only themselves, but for other people. So I don't agree with it being too much pressure, but I do think that if the role players don't step up, they have no chance of getting out of this series. Klay obviously has to shoot better. He has to be more confident. He has to finish the bunnies around the basket. We need more Jordan Poole, third quarter Jordan Poole, where he's playing free, he's playing loose, but he's not just trying to score. He's driving and creating for others. I think that's when he's at his best because it opens up the lanes for his pull-up. It opens up the lanes for his pull-up tray ball as well. The series is going to come down the role players, not Jason Tatum, not Jaylen Brown, not Steph Curry. Draymond has to be active and engaged defensively. Poole has to be able to score. GP has to give them good minutes, and Looney has to continue to rebound, provide second chance opportunities, and set great screens. If they do those things, then they got action. But to say that it's too much pressure on Steph is blasphemy because he's the only unanimous MVP, 2-timer. He'll probably win MVP of the finals if they win this series, and he's the golden child.
Well, let me say this. This is what I love about, first of all, I'm speaking to 2 highly intelligent and brilliant basketball minds who I've known for a few years. But this is what I love about the fact that y'all are being on First Take. You see, this is my show. You see what I'm saying? This ain't the basketball court. Both of y'all are wrong. Both of y'all. And why would I say that? Because J.J. Redick instigated the proceedings by trying to twist it, and then you fell for it, C.J. McCollum. So let me educate you both about what happened. The question wasn't, is there too much pressure on Steph Curry? The question was, is too much being put on Steph Curry? What do we mean by that? What is it going to take to win this series? We're not saying that what's being asked of Steph Curry is unfair, that it's too much. Oh, my God, this is Steph Curry. How could you put him under these bright lights and this pressure? That's not what somebody is saying.
Neither of us said pressure. We didn't talk about pressure, Stephen. Hey, don't twist my words. Don't twist my words. I answered the question.
T.J. McCollum said pressure on numerous occasions. Top Gun, fall back. I know you got the #1 movie. Just chill out right now, Top Gun. Sit back and listen to what I'm trying to say to you, okay? I'm saying to you is this, and guys, you know this, because you just articulated it with the astute breakdown that y'all gave. You didn't, everything that you're asking of Steph Curry, we understand that. The question is about, is too much being put on him because we're asking the question in the context, what is it going to take to win this series? You can't just sit there and look at him and expect him to rescue you game in and game out. Other guys got to step up and do all the things that you both articulated. Over the first 2 games, Steph Curry scores 21 in the first quarter. He finishes with 34 for the game, even though they neutralized him over the last 3 quarters with 13 points. They come back in game 2. He explodes. He finishes with 29. He drops 12 in the third quarter, but he had help. Jordan Poole came out there and did some things as well, and we know what Draymond brings to the equation, particularly with his intensity, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk about him later. All I'm saying is it can't be all about Steph Curry. Somebody else has to step up because they're playing the Boston Celtics. And y'all both know how big-time Boston can be. You're going to need more from the others for Golden State to win this series. That's all we're saying.
Stephen, if you're talking strictly on production and counting stats, yeah, okay, obviously, Steph Curry's not going to score 100 points and beat the Celtics single-handedly. You're going to need other guys to score and make plays. That's obvious.
Do their job.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Do their job. But the idea, what I said in my point, I didn't say the word pressure, and I apologize for not hearing the word pressure out of CJ's mouth. That's my fault. What I said is the Warriors system, the entire system is based on Steph. So this is every game. This is like their half-court offense is Steph. Their transition, it's Steph. Their movement game, their high pick and rolls, it's Steph. This is who Steph is. So they're not putting more on him all of a sudden. Like, this is who he is. So if you need to step up and, like, does Klay need to make shots? Yeah, obviously, Klay needs to make shots. They can't win this series without Klay making shots.
The Golden State Warriors have been lethal because it wasn't just about Steph Curry. It was about other people doing the things that they were supposed to do.
But it all comes from Steph,
I understand it. I understand it. And but what I'm saying is, but he's been doing what he's supposed to be doing. Now they've got to do what they're supposed to be doing because even if they weren't, they could beat most teams in the NBA. Boston's not one of those teams. They're not going to win this series if Klay continues to play the way that he's playing and Jordan Poole played the way that he played in game 1. That's what I'm saying.
Well, you should have restructured this question because the question isn't structured properly. We know Steph is playing
and
well.
by the way, CJ was a journalism major, so this is
absolutely.
I don't care.
Expert here.
I mean, he has credibility, but he's not me. But go ahead.
I don't want to be you. Honestly, I live a good life.
I got you.
Steph has scored 63 points in 70 minutes. Like JJ said before, he's a planet. Everything revolves around him. Obviously, the role players have to contribute. They have to do more, or they're not getting out of this series. Personally, I think the Celtics are going to win the series regardless. But the real issue here is that Klay Thompson is missing shots. If he's making shots, the Warriors are up 2-0. But that wasn't the question. The question was, is there being too much put on his shoulders? No.
Okay.
So
all right,
Stephen, I want to make one additional point on this, and that's just you talked about sort of guys starring in their roles, right? And obviously, Klay has yet to star in his role in this series. Andrew Wiggins didn't have a particularly efficient night last night, but his defense was amazing. So in some ways, he starred in his role, and he was really good in game 1 as well. Jordan Poole had a nice bounce-back game. Kevon Looney has been great on the offensive glass. Draymond Green had a Draymond Green game. You can't tell me he was not a star in his role last night. And then another guy they got back in the rotation last night, Gary Payton II, was a star in his role. He was on the 2 best lineups. When we talk about plus minus, he was in the 2 best lineups last night in that game. So they're getting contributions from other people. But if you want to take this segment to call out Klay, that's fine. But everyone else is doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing for this team. Everyone else is starring in their role.
Okay. All right. All right. Last point, and I'll just leave it like this. When they asked our prediction at the beginning of before the series began, I picked the Golden State Warriors to win the series in 7 games. And what I said was Steph Curry and one of those other 2, meaning Klay or Jordan Poole, has to deliver. It doesn't matter to me what anybody else does. If one of those 2 don't show up with Steph, they're not winning this series. So my prediction is predicated on the guard play of those 3 guys, 2 of those 3 guys showing up in 4 out of the 7 games, because I believe this is going to go 7. That's all I'm saying for me. I understand everybody's role. I understand what they're going to be required to do. But to me, it comes down to that when you're predicting this particular series.
Slight qualifier. I got it. I want to focus in on Draymond Green now, guys. He picked up a tech in the first quarter after tangling with Grant Williams, then went a little further in the second, pushing Jaylen Brown, appeared to pull Brown's shorts down. Unclear if that was intentional. A double tech, of course, would have resulted in an ejection for Draymond. It would have pushed his total for the playoffs to 5, which is 2 away from an automatic suspension. Here's Jaylen.
Just trying to play basketball, and I feel like that was an illegal play. I feel like they could have called it, but they let it go in terms of a technical on either way. But I don't know what I was supposed to do there. Like some guy, they got their legs on the top of your head, and then he tried to pull my pants down. I don't know what that was about, but that's what Draymond Green does.
JJ, I'll start with you. Did Draymond deserve the second tech?
Okay. CJ, have you fallen on the floor before and someone stood over you?
Absolutely. You got to get up right away.
You've got to figure out a way to get up. So he was using the shorts as leverage to pull his body weight up. I don't know that he was pulling his pants down. Draymond didn't deserve a tech here. I actually didn't think much of this play. Draymond knows what he's doing here, right? He's instigating. He's being a troll, if you will. He probably could have just moved his legs to the left. Instead, he shifted them to the right and gently rested them on the back of Jaylen Brown's head. But there was nothing about this play that I thought warranted a second technical. Draymond also knows, and there's plenty of guys in NBA history who were this way as well. Draymond knows, based on his reputation, that he's going to get a technical when he's being demonstrative early in the game. He's got to do a lot, Stephen A., to get that second technical, like a lot. And this wasn't enough, especially when you talk about the situation. Game 2 of the finals against the great Boston Celtics team. The refs made the right decision here in not throwing Draymond Green out of the game.
Yeah, we spoke about this off camera. I said the referee's job is to monitor the game, not control it. And I thought they did a great job of monitoring the situation, assessing the intention, assessing what happened. Was it extra? Absolutely. Did it deserve a technical? Absolutely not. Not in the finals, not in this situation. The referees can't control the outcome of the game. They can only kind of dictate the tempo and the pace by calling fouls, hand checking, things of that nature. But I thought that they handled this situation accordingly. Draymond knows he can get away with a little bit more than most because of his personality, his reputation, as JJ referenced before, but also the way he plays. It's well known. And I think Jaylen Brown, understanding the circumstance of the situation, didn't like it. I wouldn't like it if someone put their shoes on my head either. I would have got up fast as well. But I think Jaylen could have escalated the situation more to kind of draw more attention to it and potentially get Draymond that second technical.
Let me get on my little soapbox here and saying what I have to say. I completely agree with both of you. I don't think it warranted a second technical foul. I don't think it warranted Draymond Green being ejected. And I'm utterly disgusted that people would even think that it should be. It's almost like people, listen, if you're a Boston Celtics fan, I'm a guy that, guys, I grew up and I watched wrestling and I loved myself some Ric Flair and, to be the man, you got to beat the man. I can't stand when I get the impression that people are looking for every little thing that they can find to gain an advantage. Do you really, really want to win because Draymond Green is ejected from a game? It really, really disgusts me. I want the best players on the court. Let's go at it. I don't want injuries. I don't want excuses. I don't want anything. The officials are there to officiate the game, like you pointed out, and to contain things, but not necessarily to control things. CJ, you're absolutely right about that. But I just think that when you look at it from this perspective, the fact that it was even being contemplated was really, really annoying to me. We watched the NBA, and the NBA was popularized by watching some degree of physicality. We understand that the playoffs are different than the regular season. Intensity elevates exponentially. We get all of that. We understand that, and then we want to discipline and criticize players because their intensity level is elevated to the point that we want to see these guys going at it. As long as they ain't throwing blows at one another, what's the damn problem? So what? They were getting in each other's face or what have you, and you had to separate them, and that's a reason for officials to give these guys technicals. Or in the case of Draymond Green, you had people that wanted him thrown out the game. They wanted him to receive a second technical foul. That, to me, would have been catastrophic. And I think that it's important to point that out. The flip side to this, however, is and it's unavoidable to bring up the subject. I am one of those guys that believe years ago when Draymond Green got suspended for Game 5 because he had accumulated too many technicals, right? After LeBron James shoved him to the ground and he kicked up his feet and was accused of kicking LeBron James, and ultimately he ended up getting suspended for Game 5. I always tease that was a stimulus package given to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it cost the Golden State Warriors the title, because if y'all remember, Golden State won that game in Cleveland. They were up 3-1 going back to Golden State. If Draymond Green hadn't been gone for Game 5, I believe Golden State wins the title. Draymond is out that game. Andrew Bogut gets hurt that game. Andre Iguodala gets hurt that game. Neither are the same for the rest of the series. And as a result, LeBron James and Cleveland came back. The point that I'm bringing that up for is this reason. If you're Draymond Green at the end of the day, bro, your suspension for that game arguably cost the Golden State Warriors a championship. As right as you may be, and as addicted to your own personality as you may be, and as much as we all love ourselves some Draymond Green, because I know I do find myself scared at times watching him get in the face and being so demonstrative with officials, because it's like somebody might just sit up there and say, hell with it, I'm ejecting you from this game. And it could cost Golden State. So to me, if I'm Steve Kerr, I'm going to sit Draymond down, and I'm going to go like this. I know what you do. I know better than anybody. I'm your coach. I've been your coach all of this time. Do you really, really want to find yourself in a position where this could potentially cost us a title? Because we believe it cost us a title when you got suspended years ago in 2016 against LeBron James and those boys. Do you want that to happen again? Draymond, even though he didn't deserve a second technical, he didn't deserve an ejection, and I'm all for the brother. At the end of the day, this is the finals, and the Boston Celtics are no joke. They cannot afford to lose Draymond Green. And I fear that one official, because all it takes is one, is going to lose at one of these games and eject him. That's where I'm at, guys.
Yeah. CJ, I have a question for you. Just some insight. Obviously, you played against the Warriors a ton. What's it like going against Dre when he's at his best?
I think he's the engine of the Warriors team. Obviously, the offense revolves around Steph Curry, his movement, his gravity, if you will. He kind of attracts the defense. All eyes are constantly on him. But Dre started the game pressuring Horford. He kind of let the team know, like, look, we're not going down 0-2 at the crib. We got to make sure we're aggressive. We got to make sure we hit first. They came in our house. They punked us in the fourth quarter of game 1. And we can't let that happen again. Offensively, he rebounds, he initiates the offense. If he sees a non-shooter, he's telling the non-shooter, you got to cut through. He's a screener. He's a guy who almost refuses to shoot at times, and he's joked about it on multiple podcasts, saying, why would I shoot when I have the best shooter of all time? Even if he's kind of open, it's going in. If he's partly contested, it's going in. I think he's the one that makes them go offensively and defensively. He was lazy in game 1. He admitted it. He wasn't closing out. He was giving Horford open shots. He was not there in rotations. He wasn't hitting the pocket on his rolls. He wasn't getting the ball to the weak side. He didn't make his free throws. He did a lot of things poorly, and he accepted accountability for it, and he rose to the occasion. But I would say that when he's playing his best basketball, he's taking open shots. He's being aggressive. He's shooting those floaters in the lane, but he's also screening as he did before, where he screened 3 guys in one possession, and Steph came off and hit a tray ball.
When we think about basketball players and like a toolkit, you know, the skill sets that you put in your toolkit, C.J. McCollum, right? He's got a hezzy dribble. He's got his crossover. He's got his mid-range jumper, his step back 3. Like, he gets ready for a game. He's putting all those things in his toolkit, going to work that way. When Draymond does it, it's a very different toolkit. It's a very different toolkit. And part of that skill set is that passion and that intensity. And for him to be great, and to Molly's question, for him to be great, he has to be this way. There's no other way. There's no other way, Stephen.
I want to ask you.
No other way.
Now, I'm not debating. I'm asking. You guys play. I'm asking y'all this. I'm just asking questions here. Do you not fear that a referee, particularly in the way today's game is officiated, would be of the mentality, we don't care about any of that. Our job is to call the game the way we're instructed to call the game, and we're not going to take those very things that you just highlighted, JJ, into account, and that one of them could ultimately boot Draymond Green from a game. Are you not fearful of that?
No, listen, it's a very valid question. It's a valid point you brought up, and you're right, because all it takes is one referee in the moment, right? A split-second decision to blow his whistle and give him a second technical. My point is, this is who Draymond is, and this is what he does. He goes into a game, and he's constantly towing that line. And for whatever reason, whether it's wrong or right, I'm not going to judge based on that, or I'm not going to make a judgment call on that. When he gets that first technical, he amplifies it. That intensity, that passion, that being demonstrative with the officials, it goes up another notch, and he's constantly testing. He's testing the officials. He's testing the other team. That's part of the personnel. That's part of playing against Draymond. It's the Draymond Green experience. It's just part of it.
My only response to that would be, I get it and I understand it, but if you're the kind of official that adopts the mentality, if we let you get away with this too much, then somebody else has the license to say, when I'm going against the Golden State Warriors, I guess I can act like that too, since you're giving Draymond Green this kind of latitude. I just worry that it might cost them. And I will say this about Draymond, and I think that both of you would agree with what I'm about to say. Boy, is he lucky that Joey Crawford and Steve Javie are no longer officiating NBA games. I think he's very, very, very lucky in that regard. To that, CJ, you say what?
All officials are great, first and foremost. Rarely ever make mistakes. The efficiency rating on good calls minus bad calls is probably 98, 99%. They're only wrong probably 0.5 to 1% of the time. But I think you guys are right. He toes the line far too often. It's going to cost him at some point, and all it takes is Smart or Grant Williams to understand that Draymond has one technical. Then you get in his face. Maybe you push him first. Maybe you just throw him a little elbow, get him to react, and that gets him out of the game. Obviously, we want to see the best players play, and we don't want this to occur. But he has to be very careful, because if he doesn't have a veteran referee who's mild-mannered, well-tempered, understands him, they may do a quick technical as opposed to going to the review. They saved him by reviewing that play, because in the moment, that could have been an easy technical foul. You've seen the feet on his head, could have got rid of it early, but they understood that he already had one. They understood the personnel. JJ, we talk about KYP all the time, know your personnel, not just in sports, but they have to know their players and their players' personalities. And in this case, Draymond's reputation saved him, and will continue to save him until it doesn't.
All right, we'll leave it there. Only Westbrook has more techs than Dre since entering the league in 2012. But I want to focus on Jason Tatum now. Some would say it was a night to forget for Tatum, despite getting his shot back at least in the first half. Tatum took just 3 shots in the second half and finished a minus 36 overall. It's his worst plus-minus in any game of his career. Tatum's minus 36 plus-minus is also the worst in finals history in the 2 decades the stat has existed in basketball. So I'll start with you here, Stephen A. How much of the Game 2 loss is on Tatum?
Well, obviously some of it is on him because he's their best player, but the flip side to it is that I think collectively, guys, I just got the impression that the Boston Celtics were like, we got what we came for. We wanted to steal home court advantage. We won Game 1. So the level of urgency that we saw from them in the second half of Game 1, particularly even after they were down by 15 points in Game 1 in the third quarter, and they stormed back, that level of urgency did not exist last night. Just being there in person, just seeing what I saw, I just didn't feel like the same level of fervent energy and urgency that they had in Game 1 was present last night. And that's the only thing to me that explains it. I know that Golden State stepped up its defense. They were tenacious. They were switching. They were getting in everybody's faces. They were contesting everything. They were like piranhas out there at certain points, and I get all of that. But to me, when you're the best player and you're a top 10 player in the game, there's no excuse in an NBA Finals game that you only attempt 3 shots in the second half when it was a 2-point game at halftime. And so I look at it from that standpoint, and the only thing that I deduce from it is a level of complacency. I think that I think a lot of people on the Boston Celtics can be accused of that last night. It's not something I think will be present once they go back to Boston. It certainly won't exist as the series wanes. But I think last night that clearly appeared to be the case, that the Boston Celtics were a team that were playing like we did what we came to do by winning Game 1 and claiming home court advantage. So we're good, and I think it showed in their play.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on the Tatum point, and I'll get into that in a second. But I am going to push back a little bit on the point that they were complacent. I mean, it was a 2-point game at halftime, Stephen. I think one of the.
I'm in second half.
Okay. Oh, just okay. So,
just second half.
I don't think they came out of the halftime being like, all right, we're up to, or whatever. It was a 2-point game. We already got one. We're good going back to Boston 1-1. I look at this more like what the Warriors did in that third quarter, specifically the barrage of jump shots from Jordan Poole and Stephen Curry. That ultimately is a momentum driver, especially at home. And they started knocking down those shots. And on the other side of the basketball, you have to give the Warriors credit. Like, it's not like the Boston Celtics weren't trying to score. You know, they had I believe they had more turnovers than field goals in that third quarter. The big difference I saw between the second half of Game 2 and the second half of Game 1, if you go back to that fourth quarter when they were knocking down those shots, their rotations were all a step slow. The dribble buys, the second help defender coming over, he was a step slow. The kick pass, the X guy, the rotation of that was a step slow. On every swing, they got an open shot. There wasn't a defender within 8 feet in Game 1. Last night, in that third quarter, their rotations were on point. They did such a good job of running the Boston Celtics off the three-point line and then bringing in second, third help defenders and then rotating back out. So I don't think this was the Boston Celtics being complacent. I think this was a masterful third quarter performance from the Golden State Warriors. And ultimately, Tatum's not going to come back in that game in the fourth quarter for very long because of the nature of the score and obviously going back the rest of the way. And the other point I wanted to make about Tatum, look, he, to me, had a little bit of an up and down game. And the one thing that I keep talking about is the decision making. We talk about the turnovers all the time. But so far in this series, of any player that shot 5 or more shots, he's got the worst shot quality, according to Second Spectrum, of any player in this series. So he's got to stop settling. There's too many times where he has a smaller defender on him. He settles for that step-back jumper, contested. There's too many times where he's got a smaller defender on him, and he's using that James Harden rip-through, trying to draw a foul, and throws up a bad shot or makes a turnover. He's got to be better. And the last point I wanted to make about the original question regarding how much of this is on Tatum, we have all said this in the last 20 minutes. Ultimately, role players are going to help decide this series. And Derek White, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, they were phenomenal in Game 1. Those 3 guys combined for 65 points. In Game 2, they combined for just 16. So it's going to take a collective effort on both teams. But besides the fact that Tatum did, to me, have an up and down game, this was not all on him.
Good?
Yeah, I mean, I think they said it all. I think it comes down to the role players, and I think Tatum going 6 for 9 from 3 was a great start and a step in the right direction. He'll shoot better at home. I don't mind the mid-range shots because you have to shoot those in the playoffs. You have to be a 3-level scorer because the defense is going to come. But I would like to see him take those middies in the second half. Early on in the game, threes and rim, establish your presence, establish that you're here. You're going to get to the free throw line. You put the onus on the referees early, right? Maybe you get Dre in foul trouble, maybe Steph's reaching in, things of that nature. But you also let your teammates know that, hey, when I drive and they converge, I'm willing to kick it out. And I think that's what he did in Game 1, where he only took 17 shots, right? A lot of them were contested. A lot of them were tough around the basket. But the amount of shots he was creating for others is what really won in that game. And that's what allowed Derek White to be comfortable. That's what allowed Al Horford to have an impact in the game. And that's what's going to allow Pritchard and the rest of the guys to be successful.
Well, I think what you pointed out, CJ, a little bit earlier when you pointed to Draymond acknowledging that he was a bit lazy and wasn't closing out on Al Horford in Game 1, facilitated Al Horford making a lot of those shots because a lot of them were barely contested. That's number one. And I get exactly what you're saying. But number two, I'm going to go back to J.J. Redick, and I'm going to ask you, sir, to be careful because when you misrepresent what I say, you ain't as good at doing that as I am. You don't want to start that trend, okay? Because I'll get you. Now, let me tell you something right now.
What did I misrepresent, Stephen?
I did not say they came out complacent. What I said was the level of complacency that appeared in Game 2 was absent in Game 1. They were up 15. Golden State was up 15 midway through the third quarter in Game 1. And the urgency that the Boston Celtics played with, storming back and making it a 30-point difference, going down from down 15 to up 15 in the fourth quarter. I said that there was complacency once Golden State got up in Game 2 that I didn't see in Game 1. Because I didn't say they came out complacent. I didn't do that. I'm just saying once they were down in midway through the third quarter, it was like, hey, we got Game 1.
The first time you said, I'm going to review the tape because I review all our tapes.
That's all I said that.
No, I review all our tapes. I review all our interactions.
You do.
I know
so
you
do
twist
I.
my words.
So
and I'm going to go back to the beginning of what you said. And what I heard was they were complacent in Game 2. You did not clarify or qualify that once they made that run. The point I want to make, I just want to make one point from my perspective, because I've lived on the other side of one of those Golden State runs, as has CJ. And there is something that is so deflating about being in a tightly contested game and then having Steph Curry hit 3 straight threes, having Jordan Poole hit a couple threes, and then a half-court heave. The momentum, I don't necessarily always agree with the momentum takes that people give, but there is something about that Golden State Warriors team, historically, at home especially, when they start knocking down those shots, it kills all of your own momentum. It kills all of your own intensity. Like, it is completely deflating.
Question. And I throw this out to both of y'all because, again, y'all play. Y'all are elite. I got it. The thing that I pay attention to, like, for example, when Boston came back from 15 down and they went up 15, you know what I found myself saying about Golden State? Well, I understand you couldn't stop them, but damn, what the hell they doing stopping you? In other words, if you got a cushion and you can go in, I understand the momentum shift that you're talking about. I mean, CJ's done it himself. You've done it yourself. Obviously, CJ played with Dame Dollar. We know what he could bring to the table, particularly in big moments. But when you have a cushion and a team is coming at you and they're just draining shots from all over the place, my mentality is, well, you do get the ball back. It's not like they score and you don't get the ball. You could score your damn self, particularly when you have that kind of a cushion. Are we wrong in bringing that up from time to time? Because, again, if you've got a potent enough offense, that could stop the bleeding.
Stephen A., hold that thought because we went really long. We did about 2 countdowns in this A block, so let's keep going
just
here.
Coming
up here on First Take, some news to get into. Quinn Snyder's out of Utah, so does that leave someone on this set in an Empire state of mind for Donovan Mitchell? And the Warriors resigned after 8 seasons with the franchise. The team announced on Sunday Jazz ownership and management spent several weeks trying to convince Snyder to return as coach, even offering a contract extension. But he simply decided that his time had come to step away from the job, sources telling our Adrian Wojnarowski. He had a .623 winning percentage. In the aftermath of Snyder's departure, All-Star guard Donovan Mitchell is described as unsettled, unnerved, and wondering what this means for the franchise's future, sources telling ESPN on Sunday. Mitchell considered Snyder a significant part of his reasoning for committing to a 5-year maximum contract extension in 2020, and Snyder's decision to step away on Sunday has left Mitchell surprised and disappointed. JJ and CJ still here with us, but Stephen A., I want to start with you. Should Donovan Mitchell want out of Utah?
I would say yes. That's throwing no shade on the organization whatsoever. They've been to the playoffs the last 3 years. The last 6 years, although they've been bounced out of the first round 3 times in the last 4 years. I respect the hell out of Quinn Snyder as a coach. I think that he's a head coach in this game. I think that he will easily get another head coaching job whenever he sees fit to do that, assuming that, he's interested in coming back immediately as opposed to taking a break. But in speaking about Donovan Mitchell wanting out of Utah, I just think that you have to look at certain markets and the ability to attract free agents. I don't assume that Utah is one of them. You have tradable assets, you have the draft, but when you talk about free agents, who's coming to Utah? I think that's a legitimate question. And CJ McCollum and it can definitely relate to where to the fact that I'm coming from this position, because in the interest of full disclosure, CJ McCollum will tell you I spent years, and I said it to him a few times directly, I always believed that him and Damian Lillard should part ways because I thought that both of them were big-time players, but together you may not necessarily win the chip, so you use one of them to get other assets to pair with the other. But I always respect them and revere them as great, great talents. But nevertheless, I felt like they were always going to be stuck with one another in Portland, and Portland was never going to be able to attract really big-time free agents. And the same is applicable to the Utah Jazz. I just think that you don't have anybody coming to Utah, and I think that we've all heard the noise about the relationship with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and how Donovan Mitchell didn't necessarily want to be there, even though he signed a contract extension to make sure he got his money. He wasn't long for that place. I don't know. The only other thing that I would add is this: Dwayne Wade is a person to think about here. We know that he doesn't have a majority stake in ownership or anything like that. But the reason why I bring up Dwayne Wade, he's a future Hall of Famer. We all know what he brought to the table. He's highly respected and revered in NBA circles. And remember, no shade thrown whatsoever on the first-class organization that I know the Miami Heat to be. But it is safe to say that Dwayne Wade wasn't always pleased with how things went down there as far as he was concerned. And so when you have a player the caliber of a Donovan Mitchell, if he has any kind of similar feelings, somebody that can relate to that is Dwayne Wade. Will that lead to him influencing him to stay or facilitating him being out the door because he can read the handwriting on the wall? I don't know the answer to that question, but I do think that it's something worth considering, fellas.
CJ, you should handle this.
I'll start. I know the NBA is watching this. Utah,
you don't have to.
Fantastic city. I have no further comments on this matter. I hope Donovan Mitchell continues to do the things that makes him happy. I hope Rudy continues to do the things that make him happy. And in a perfect world, they continue to coexist, and Donovan passes to him more than once a game.
Wow.
JJ, before you go on, JJ, let me interject in all seriousness by saying this. We're talking about C.J. McCollum, the president of the Players Association. For the audience out there that doesn't understand, doesn't get it, that's not something that he should provide an opinion on. He ain't running from it. He has a responsibility, not just as an NBA player, but as an officer with the NBA Players Association, to not go there. And that's why he's not, and I don't blame him one bit. And CJ, that question was not for you, okay? Just so you know. I just want you to know that. I want the audience to know that. Go ahead, JJ.
I'm not going to pretend to speak for Donovan here, because I don't know his feelings towards the organization. I don't know his feelings towards Salt Lake City. I don't know if he has a desire to be in a bigger market. So I want to speak more about, first of all, the job that Quinn Snyder did. That organization after Jerry Sloan and after the Darren Williams trade, they were stuck in the mud there for a number of years. And Quinn Snyder, Dennis Lindsey, through draft picks, and that front office got this organization into a really good place. And Quinn should be applauded for the job that he did. And I get what he's saying here about the team needing a different voice, because my observation throughout this season is that this team felt stale. And sometimes when you go through playoff failure, it can motivate you, and it can sort of accelerate and bring the team together. And other times, it feels like it pulls you apart. And I lived that a little bit with the Los Angeles Clippers, and I can speak to that. I felt this year this team felt stale, and so I think the question is not should Donovan Mitchell want out. The question should be what are the goals of the Utah Jazz going forward? If the goal is to win a championship, then you have to restructure this roster. And obviously, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell are the two guys on this team that probably carry the most trade value. And of course, these two guys, it's been reported, I don't know this firsthand, but it's been reported that there has been some friction between the two of them at times. So you trade one of them and you continue to build and hopefully become a championship contender. Donovan Mitchell, by the way, and I just want to, because I know Stephen A., I know you're a Knicks fan. I know there's a lot of Knicks rumors out there. Donovan Mitchell is a fantastic player. He's been an all-star. He was an asterisk, basically for Rookie of the Year because Ben Simmons was in the second year. But I don't know that him going to the New York Knicks, Stephen, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know that him going to the New York Knicks is going to be that much of a difference maker for the Knicks. Because what made Donovan and the Utah Jazz so good is that pairing with Rudy Gobert. Now, obviously, that pairing, I think, has been maximized, and that's probably second round of the playoffs. That's probably what we're looking at going forward. But I just want to give you just a little bit of pause, because I know you may be excited about Donovan Mitchell going to the Knicks. I don't know if he's going to all of a sudden elevate the Knicks into contention.
Listen, man, I have fun on First Take, but when we get into serious issues, I know how to be serious. And the reality of the situation is that the New York Knicks are not an organization that's worthy of Donovan Mitchell. Let's just call it what it is. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm a diehard New York Knicks fan. I root for them. They make me sick to my stomach because I'm emotionally connected to this franchise who repeatedly frustrates me and ticks me off year after year after year, with the exception of a couple of years ago when I would stupidly talk about we here, yeah, finally, and I embarrassed myself with it because I believed enough in the organization. The New York Knicks are a national embarrassment because of James Dolan, and Leon Rose hasn't helped matters any because here you are, you're the president of basketball operations, and you're giving a press conference talking to the media in September, and then nobody finds you until April, and even then you're giving an in-house interview owned by the interview with the network that's owned by James Dolan. So the reality of the situation is World Wide West, Scott Perry, Kenny Payne, Tom Thibodeau, and all of these guys, unfortunately, are stained by the level of ineptitude coming from the top. That's like a damn virus coming down upon everybody, even though that's not the appropriate thing to bring up right now, so I apologize for that in the age of COVID. In the end, what it comes down to is this. They tick me off. They don't deserve Donovan Mitchell. I hope they get Donovan Mitchell. I would be ecstatic about that, JJ, but I am under no illusions. I know that it's a slim to zero chance that they get Donovan Mitchell. I would be ecstatic if they did get him, even if it meant giving up Julius Randle to get him. I would be happy about that in a heartbeat because I think Donovan Mitchell is a star. And by the way, while I'm pointing the fingers at people, y'all do understand that Phil Jackson should not be allowed beyond the borders of New York after passing up Donovan Mitchell with the 8th pick to draft Frank Ntilikina. I was on New York radio screaming about the fact that Donovan Mitchell played for Louisville. This brother could ball. You got the 8th overall pick. You snatch him. And Phil Jackson, all right, bad hips and all, talking about he saw this guy, Frank Ntilikina, play in France, was worthy of being the number 8 overall pick. Phil Jackson, the coach, is a legend. Phil Jackson, the executive, shouldn't be allowed in the state of New York after the atrocity of his performance that he put forth for years running the damn New York Knicks organization. And that's all I got to say, because even thinking about it even more pisses me off. So let's move on.
I want to make one point, Stephen A., just a sort of a broad generality about something you said when you were talking about Utah not being able to be a free agent destination. You know, one of the reasons that the New York Knicks and to a degree where the Los Angeles Lakers are right now is because they place too much emphasis on free agents. And if you look across the board at the teams that made deep playoff runs this year, almost all of them, their best players are homegrown talent. Now, there's exceptions to that, of course. You know, Chris Paul on the Suns, but Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, all homegrown. You see that with the Boston Celtics. Of course, you see that with Golden State as well. So the organizations that are placing, Memphis Grizzlies, another great example, the organizations that are placing an emphasis on actually drafting well, and you can go down the line year after year after year at how poorly the Knicks have drafted. That really is the issue. It's not a free agent issue.
Yeah.
JJ, but stop bringing the Knicks up in the same breath as the Lakers. Regardless of what you want to say about the Lakers, they've got 6 titles this millennium. The New York Knicks haven't won a title in 50 years. Don't stop comparing the two, will you? Stop it.
I'm comparing where they're at right now in terms
They're
of
horrible.
not having homegrown draft picks. That was the comparison. I'm not comparing anyone.
Well, let me lose with LeBron James.
I want to be very clear on
Let me lose with LeBron James instead of Julius Randle.
You'll
Okay, how about
gladly lose
that?
with LeBron James. All right, we got
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We have a series, folks. The Warriors, even the NBA Finals, with a 107-88 win over the Celtics at 1 game apiece. Series shifting back to the Bean Wednesday for Game 3. Steph Curry scored 29 points. He held it down and then some. Steph, talk to me.
I think it's different just because of the way the team's constructed. There's always a need for me to be aggressive, try to play make, try to score. understand how the defense is going to guard me and guard us as a team, and be able to counter that. When you compare it to years past, with the depth that we had, with the heavy loading of scoring, and me, KD, Clay, different, but and the game flows a little different. But I think this year there's definitely a need for me to be aggressive throughout the game, to create, draw attention, get shots up, and just continue to apply pressure.
With their Game 2 performance, the Warriors are now favored to win the finals again. A reminder, the Celtics have won 13 of 14 NBA titles after winning Game 1. The series now shifts to Boston for Games 3 and 4, where the Celtics are just 5 and 4 this postseason. Okay, JJ, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
You picked the Celtics, right?
I did pick the Celtics.
Okay,
yeah.
so here's what I want to know. Which team should feel better now heading into Game 3? Is it the Warriors or the Celtics?
Well, I honestly think both teams should feel good. I'll tell you why. So the Celtics did their job, and they got a game in Golden State. And obviously they've struggled at home, but now they have home court for this series. And Golden State should feel good because they have played stretches of basketball against this Boston Celtics defense that has looked beautiful. And the third quarter last night was a great example of that. I think both teams have concerns here. And specifically for the Celtics, their turnovers and how to guard Steph Curry in the pick and roll. And that's where I think the biggest adjustment has got to be going forward if you're the Celtics. And maybe some of that is rotation. Maybe some of that is Daniel Tice. It doesn't play, and you go smaller and use Al Horford and use Grant Williams and switch more, or you're up in the pick and roll. The Celtics are trying to stay out of that backside 4-on-3, Stephen A., right? We've seen it so many times where teams blitz Steph Curry, and he's able to throw it back to Kevon Looney or Draymond Green, and all of a sudden it's a 4-on-3 on the backside. So that's a real concern for the Celtics. And for the Warriors, you have not seen the best version of Jason Tatum yet. You know, that to me is a little bit concerning. I didn't think he obviously didn't shoot it well in Game 1. I didn't think he had a bad game because of his playmaking, but I thought last night he was really, really up and down. He made some bad decisions. He took some tough shots. And I don't think you've seen the best version of Tatum. And, of course, give the Warriors credit, which I did in the first hour. And, Stephen A., you talked about Andrew Wiggins as a defender last week, and I downplayed it a little bit. And so I'm willing to admit right now I was wrong. Okay?
Thank you.
Say it again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But are you going to answer the question?
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting on.
Are you going to answer the question? Answer the question,
team should
JJ.
feel better?
No,
you dancing like Fred
team,
Astaire.
Just tell me which
now,
team
Top
do you
Gun
feel
doesn't
better
dance.
about right now?
I feel better about the Celtics. I
All right,
made the mistake in that Heat 76ers series. Hold on. I made the mistake in the Heat 76ers series of flip-flopping halfway through the series. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. I feel better about
So we got to answer. All right, so you feel better about the Celtics. Well, congratulations, because that's the damn answer we were waiting for. Giving us a dissertation, Top Gun. I needed a decision. You were giving me both. I mean, leave something to me. I mean, damn, all the points that you made, I disagree with none of them. None of them at all. I just needed you to pick a side, okay? And you finally did after about 20 minutes. Here's the deal, okay?
Don't look at me. I can't.
For me,
My answer on the sheet that I gave the producers is
you're
both
sitting in that
teams.
seat. You're sitting in that. I told you there's a responsibility in that seat, JJ. I keep telling you that. But here's the deal. I'm going to roll with you, with the Celtics. I think the Celtics should feel better, despite the fact that they got blown out. Here's the deal. First of all, the Boston Celtics always respond. They haven't lost back-to-back games in these playoffs. That's number one. Number two, the fact that you got blown out, you know you're better than that. Number three, you know that Jason Tatum is better than what he has shown you. And number four, just stop turning the damn basketball over. You've already claimed home court advantage in this series because you got your one game in Golden State. So I believe at this particular moment, I think we'll be singing a different tune by the time Game 5 rolls around. But for the moment, I believe that the Boston Celtics should be feeling a lot better after these first two games because of what we've seen them capable of doing and what we know they're capable of doing, and they haven't done. I think that they should feel better about where they are right now.
I just wanted to bring up a point because earlier in the show, we were talking about that Warriors third quarter last night where they hit a bunch of jumpers in a row. Steph got going, Jordan Poole got going, and I talked about momentum. And I want to be clear on this. I think within a game, there are momentum swinging plays. I think within a series, I don't buy the momentum thing. And the Boston Celtics are a great example of this. If you go back to the Milwaukee series, right? They lose game 3 by 23 points. They go down 2-1. They win game 4. They lose game 5. They're down 3-2. They win 2 straight elimination games. Game 5 against Miami. In Miami, they lose that game. They do it again. They win 2 elimination games, game 6 and game 7, to get to the finals. This is a team that bounces back. Ime Udoka can make adjustments. To me, they're actually doing some weird pre-switches on side out of bounds plays and on inbound underneath out of bounds plays. They're pre-switching, so they've got a bunch of different people on Steph Curry. Marcus Smart hasn't really started on him on those plays. And then within those pick and rolls, they have options. They can blitz, they can hedge, not hedge, but be up in the coverage. They can switch, and then rotation-wise. I think both teams are deep, and both teams have the luxury of figuring out different, rotations. And I know I said this earlier, but like just having Gary Payton II back in the lineup last night was a huge boost for the Warriors. He was on the 2 best lineups in terms of plus minus last night. Gary Payton II was in those lineups. So I think both teams have some adjustments to make. But I think when I think about the Celtics and the adjustments they can make, there's room to be excited, and there's obviously room to be excited about the fact that Jason Tatum should and will be better in this series.
I will say this to you. Jordan Poole had a strong second half. He had 2 points on 1 for 5 shooting in the first half last night. And we know we've already lamented Clay. I get everything that you're saying about those other role players. Gary Payton II, I love seeing him back out there. That was a huge, huge deal for Golden State. It's specifically when he hit the corner 3 as well, because it's one thing, what he's going to bring defensively and athletically, but he attacks the basket, and he will hit an open 3, and he'll take it. And so, obviously, I think that goes a long way. We know what Otto Porter can bring to the table. We get all of that. But to me, another reason why Boston should feel better right now at this point, again, we'll say something probably different going into Game 5 back in Golden State. But right now, why Boston should feel better, Klay Thompson is so pivotal to me. When Klay Thompson is rolling with Steph, sometimes better than Steph, that's when the Warriors are the Warriors. And to me, he closes the deal. If Klay Thompson gets going in this series, it's a wrap. There's no answer when Steph and Klay get going, because what that does to galvanize everybody else around Golden State, it's just something special to behold. But we're not seeing that as of yet.
I'm not concerned about. I mean, 10 days ago he had 32 points in a closeout game. Some of this is the Boston Celtics have done a really good job contesting his shots. They've been physical. Yep. They've had great court awareness. I did a details episode for ESPN Plus on Klay's Game 5, and there were so many times where he's coming off screens, and the starting point of the Mavs defenders were so far off the body. To guard Steph and Klay off the ball, you have got to be up to touch. You got to have literally physical contact with them as you get ready to fight through these picks. And I think the Celtics have done a good job. I will say this, and we talked about Tatum. He's probably going to be better. Klay's going to be better. I would expect Klay to be better. You bring up Jordan Poole all the time, and one of the things from last night was, for a guy who's like a lot of shooters, a lot of scorers, he's an irrational confidence guy. Like a third quarter like he had last night, that could potentially be a little bit of a shift for him in this series going forward. Sometimes you just need to see a few going in a row.
Let me say this. I would encourage people to go watch you on detail. You do a good job, my man. I'm very, very proud of you. I'm very proud of you, JJ. You continue to impress. I got to admit to you. I watched it. I see your breakdown, and I love it. I really, really do. Having said that, I got to give my man Jalen Rose some props here. Jalen Rose goes out last night, and he highlighted on NBA Countdown how they're making Klay work. Shots are contested. There's somebody in his face. They're rolling off picks. They're putting a body on him constantly. Klay, what Boston is doing to him, he's not accustomed to that with the degree of regularity that they do it. Number 2, because he's still not 100%, The fact that they put him through all of that might compromise those legs a little bit. And as a result, might be throwing off his shot as well. Because people just look at you launching as a jump shooter and they don't realize how important of a component legs are to literally helping you shoot the basketball better. So I take that into consideration as well. And I get that I can see Klay exploding one game or whatever. They need 3 more. And I think that if Klay can give you anything close to Klay, I'm telling you, I don't see Golden State losing this series. I'm counting on them to do it, but I got to admit, Boston looks like they're giving him a huge, huge headache.
Okay. But even after the loss, you both feel better about Boston right now. We will leave it there.
Jackson, thing of beauty.
Overcome all of your enemies, rise above it by any means.
I don't really care about people who not with me every day.
Overcome it, it's a done deal. Flying against any y'all.
I just want to keep winning.
2019 NFL MVP Lamar Jackson has noticeably been absent from Ravens OTAs for the first time in his career. Jackson is entering his 5th-year option, which will pay him a little over $23 million this season. Questions continue to swirl about the star quarterback's long-term contract situation. Baltimore's mandatory minicamp is scheduled for June 14 to 16. Now, our quarterback joins the show, my guy, Darren Orlovsky. Top of the morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Hold on, Molly.
Good morning.
Hold on, Molly.
Here we go.
Molly, first of all, I want to apologize because, I usually start off the day critiquing you, Molly, because you're always beautiful, and I always tell you that. But if I don't like something on your wardrobe or whatever, I'll let you know. But I didn't compliment you today on how great you're looking today. And I want to transition to Dan because I'm about to get a little bit emotional right now. I just want everybody to know Dan Orlovsky is going to be a part of Monday Night Football with my man Louis Riddick. To watch this young pup grow and mature in this business the way that he has, and to show up on First Take and to be on NFL Live. Hold on. Just watch this guy grow before our very eyes. He is now graduated, Molly, to a point where he's actually going to put his wife in first class. He's actually going to do this, Molly. Yes, you are.
Dan, what are you
Don't ruin
doing?
this.
Tell me. What are you doing?
Stephen A. is breaking news a little bit for ESPN, but
it was in the news.
I think
it was in the news.
First Take. Let's go. Tell me what's happening.
I'm having the opportunity to be calling Monday Night Football games with Louis and Steve Levy for the extra Monday Night Football games, or like Saturday, NFL on ABC's type stuff. So I'm obviously extremely, extremely excited about that and thankful for it. And I'm hoping to still be a part of First Take during the football season as well. I'm not changing anything. I'm just going to do more. That's not just going to do more.
There's no hope. There's no hope. You will be unless you continue to be cheap with your wife. I'm serious about this. You can't be, you got a reputation. Don't sit there and roll your eyes, Molly. Come on. You're a lady for crying out loud.
My wife's going on she's going on a bachelorette party, I think July 24th weekend, to Baja Mar with some of her college friends, so some of her best friends.
It's supposed to be awesome there.
She's flying coach.
Oh, my goodness.
She's flying coach.
He says that.
I honestly,
that with pride.
I honestly believe.
Let's move on.
You have to.
I take back everything I said. Everything I said.
Dan, I don't have time to properly congratulate you the way I wanted to. I had a lot of things I wanted to say, and I'm being told we have to get to the debate.
The nice thing is,
I will do it another time, but you're so deserving.
Nice. Thank you, Molly. You do look nice. Stephen A's shirt looks like my coffee color in the morning, though.
We need like a segment before the segment. All right, let me go here. Dan, huge congrats. We'll talk about this more after. This is major.
Thank you. I appreciate you both.
Tell me this, Stephen A. Is Lamar's absence from OTA something or nothing? Because I know no one cares about my opinion, but I'm starting to think it might be something.
It is something. It is something. And here's what I mean by this. I'm not talking literally, Dan, in all seriousness, about the actual OTAs. It's voluntary. Like Lamar Jackson pointed out on several occasions in the past, it's voluntary. It's not mandatory. We understand that. I get that. I'm just talking about for him with his situation. You got contract situations that need to be resolved. You're representing yourself as opposed to having representation. You know, you're not only the star quarterback, you're the face of the franchise. So much evolves around you. And I don't think that in certain respects, Lamar Jackson is looking at the big picture. Let me be clear, because I know the Ryan Clarks of the world, the Swag Goons of the world, along with yourself, are listening to me. I am not implying by any stretch of the imagination that Lamar Jackson should go out there and play during OTAs and risk injuring himself. I've been on the record about that. He shouldn't do a damn thing without a new contract. That is not what I am implying. I'm talking about a presence. I'm talking about showing up and making sure the organization knows that it's a priority for you to remain a part of this organization. You're the leader. You're the face of the franchise. You're the star. And so much evolves around you, particularly in the land of the NFL, that anything that you do that gives off a kind of vibe that that's not a priority for you is potentially detrimental to the bottom line of a franchise, which is winning. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's not just about, I've said this on many occasions, and it transcends beyond the court or the field of play, which is something that I try to tell people all the time. When you get paid the big bucks, it's not just because of your performance. It's because you prove you're trustworthy. Yeah. You're going to show up. You prioritize winning above all else. You prioritize a bottom line. I want him to get paid. He deserves Josh Allen caliber money. We all know this. And I'm not disputing any of that. But part of it is not doing just what you want to do because you want to do it. It's doing what's best. Yeah. And when you're not prioritizing that, it becomes a bit risky. So in my perfect world, Lamar Jackson would show up and not do a damn thing, but hold a clipboard, talk with the coaches, and show, I'm looking forward to being here without doing anything. Okay. That's all I'm talking about. Nothing else.
I think you make some good points, a couple pushbacks. So I agree with you. He's the face of Baltimore. I think he's one of the faces of the league. You know, I honestly believe that. Here's I do not think this is a big issue. I think there's a couple parts that are attached to this. Number one, I think the great majority of people underestimate how long the NFL year is. We often say how long an NFL season is. The NFL year is incredibly long. This is a job that demands 100% every single day, 7 days a week, from really the third week of July all the way last week of July, all the way through basically till the beginning of February. And that is a physical and mental exhaustion for so many of these players. And then to think that they're just going to ramp it up in April and May and get back to it, you're not going to get that great version of them when it matters the most in November and December. So I think that's part of this. The second thing is this. If you hear the reports coming out that the Ravens want to sign Lamar, and one of the main reasons why Lamar hasn't necessarily sat down and gotten this done is because he wants to prove to the organization, I'm a Super Bowl champion. I think it is about winning. And we've even heard the report that he doesn't know if he's necessarily worth that contract, so to speak. And so it'd be much better. Imagine if Lamar Jackson showed up to OTAs and he's there not working out, but he's just there. We all would be sitting here saying, Lamar, what are you doing? You're not getting any better. You should, if you want to get better and you don't want to be participating and putting yourself at risk, well, go be working with a private quarterback coach or somebody who can be solely focused on Lamar Jackson. Because the reality is when you go for some of these OTAs, you've got 3 or 4 coaches that are focused on 90 dudes. Lamar might be away from the football team right now, and he might be hiring 1 or 2 people that are solely focused on getting Lamar Jackson to play as good as he possibly can. That's what's best for Lamar, and that's what's best for the Ravens. Him not being there for some OTAs to work on out routes with Rashad Bateman in May and June is not going to determine whether they win a bunch of games in November or December.
Wait a minute. But my problem with your take is that you're putting the OTAs in a vacuum. I'm going macro. I'm bringing into account not having representation, negotiating your own contract. Okay. But supposedly, sometimes you're not reachable. People are not on the phone with you. There's not discussions. Everything's on his timetable. And I remember he got into something a few days ago. I don't know when it was with Chris Sims, and I'm just paraphrasing here, where he talked about Lamar's going to be Lamar. It's voluntary OTAs.
Right.
I'm going to be there because Chris Sims pointed out how Tom Brady didn't miss OTAs until after he won Super Bowls, et cetera, et cetera. I'm saying you've got to take everything into consideration in terms of his involvement with the direction of this franchise, because his money is going to dictate and to some degree manipulate the direction that this franchise goes in. And my last point is, when you bring up Super Bowls and how, he's a Super Bowl champion, et cetera, let me correct you. I know you didn't say that literally, but Lamar's not even a national champion.
Sure.
Never won a national championship in college, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl in the NFL. He's big time. Let's understand that. But in the same breath, let's understand there's a way to go. There's some improvement to show.
I think
and him needing to be there does matter.
I think I'd say this with the macro viewpoint. I believe that Lamar has earned the benefit of the doubt. That we can trust Lamar, that he has not only his play on the field has proven he's going to take care of his business, but also the way he handles himself off the field, also the way he is this absolutely obsessive leader within their organization. I think that he's earned the benefit of the doubt for us to sit back and say, we're going to trust that he, his camp, his people are going to make the right decision for him and his role in that organization moving forward. And I think that that's something that we've got to give him. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair.
I think he's earned that right.
That's fair. We just never heard he had a camp. That's fair, but we never heard he had a camp. We never heard he had anybody. We don't know who the hell he has.
I think it's silly for us to sit here and pretend that Lamar is doing everything by himself.
Okay. I don't think that's silly. I mean, he is a maverick.
All right. Hey, Dan, in all seriousness, obviously you're such a natural talent. You have a great personality. We all love working with you. But I know how hard you work as well. So huge congratulations. New deal, new role, the whole thing. I'm so glad.
Thank you, Molly. A big thank you to both.
But I'm so glad we didn't lose you. Seriously, I'm so glad you're going to be here at ESPN.
Thank you.
All right,
I feel the
we'll
same.
keep it rolling.
You're the man, Stephen. I appreciate you. Thanks, Miles.
Always, bro.
Last week, Adam Silver said he'd potentially be open to discussions of shortening the regular season only if it could be proven to mitigate injuries. Here's our Richard Jefferson with his thoughts on a shortened season.
This is my issue right here, right? Is that you have game readies, you have Normatechs. There was years ago where players used to not travel. They would not travel commercial. We have eliminated back-to-backs. We now have a week-long all-star break instead of like 3.5 days. Yep. And I remember guys used to have to catch flights, play the last game on Thursday, play in the game on Sunday, and then you would have a game on Tuesday, Wednesday. They have done every single thing. Every team now has sleep staffs. They have extra training staff. When I came into the league, you had 2 trainers, and one of them doubled as an equipment manager. Now you have massage therapists that travel with teams. Now guys are staying, and now you want to shorten the season? Like, how much more do we have to make this coddling and all of this stuff go with the players? It makes absolutely no sense. Professional sports is not good on your body. It's supposed to separate the people that can do it from the people that can't do it. And while we do want our best product on the floor, part of greatness is longevity.
Is it coddling or is it making the regular season matter more? So that's RJ's thoughts. JJ, what do you think? Should the NBA consider shortening the regular season?
I think they should consider it. And obviously, CJ, of course, being the head of the Players Union, we've had these discussions now for probably 5 or 6 years. And it always goes back to, well, are we going to lose money? I mean, that's what it comes down to. As much as we can talk about the injuries, and I thought RJ's take was super passionate. I think he has some valid points in there. But ultimately, the owners and the players don't want to lose revenue. And so if there's a way to create a filler or a gap to make up for that lost revenue of 24 home games, by all means, it should be considered. I mean, I like the idea in the same way that the NFL owns Sunday. If the NBA could own 2 nights, you had a 58-game season, everybody played each other once. And by the way, if everybody plays each other once and the schedule's actually balanced and there's not guys taking games off for load management, it probably gives people like me and people like Stephen A. a much more holistic view of where the NBA stands because of all of the imbalance of the schedule, the imbalance of guys sitting out certain games against certain opponents. It's really hard to gauge, throughout the course of a season, where exactly a team is in the hierarchy of the NBA. Having said all that, again, I said they should consider it. Having said all of that, I think you run into, and RJ brought this up, it wasn't in that clip, but he brought it up as well. You run into an issue when we talk about legacy, when we talk about records. You start changing the amount of games played. All of a sudden, certain records may never be broken. The new records probably don't carry the same weight. Look, it's hard to contextualize everything, but I always go back to the 1950s and the 1960s, the early NBA, when they're anywhere from 8 to 11 teams. You know, the Boston Celtics, most of those championship years when they won 11, they had to win 2 playoff series. They got a bye in the first round. They won a 5-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then they win a championship. So you would have to contextualize the future NBA records and the future scoring and all that based upon what the changes made to the schedule.
JJ, let's shove all of that aside. Let's shove all of that aside for a second. Listen, it really comes down to, it's about money. You play less games, you're going to cost the owners money, the owners are going to cost the players money. That's really what it comes down to. It also comes down to what RJ was talking about. How much more can people be pacified? Look at the modifications that are made. Look at the means that you have available to you. Look at the eradication of back-to-back-to-backs. Think about, like he brought up massages and, sleep coach or whatever the hell he was talking about. You got all of this stuff that's available to you as a players, not to mention the millions upon millions of dollars that these players are making. Let me just put this on the line and just say this. And CJ, I don't envy the position that you are in at all. To be quite honest with you, as proud as I am that you're the guy heading the NBA Players Association, because I don't think it could have been placed in better hands. I got a lot of love for you. You know that. And you certainly don't epitomize, neither did JJ, what I'm about to say. Back in the day, we had dudes putting themselves through hell to get themselves another contract that would pay dudes a portion of what they're getting now. Now we have guys in the NBA who literally are healthy enough to play with multi-million-dollar contracts that span 8, dare I say 9 figures, because they're looking ahead to the next contract. That's how bad it has gotten in certain respects. Not by many, certainly not by all, not by most, but a select few. And more importantly, the more they get, the more they want, even if it means compromising the betterment of the whole. Because everybody can't do what some cats can do. Everybody don't have the 9-figure contracts. Everybody ain't guaranteed $30, $35, $40, $45 million a year. Everybody can't sit up there and tell folks to kiss off and know they still got their guaranteed dollars coming in their coffers. They can't do that. So when you act accordingly and you conduct yourself in a fashion that is detrimental to the overall product, that forces owners to come at you in a way that's not beneficial to the collective whole, they might not suffer, but the body of NBA players end up suffering. And that's what we're talking about here. Once again, we're talking about appeasing folks as opposed to encouraging and imploring them to live up to the responsibilities that they signed on to do. I'm not going to mention any names, but we all know that there are players. I'm not saying they're 100% healthy. Y'all know better. Y'all know better than me. They're not. But I'm talking about guys healthy enough to play. But they don't necessarily prioritize and push themselves because guess what? I want to be right for the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. And I want to put myself in a position where I'm positioning myself to get another contract, even though I already got a contract paying me high 8s, 9 figures. That has been to the detriment of the league. And I think this latest situation, in terms of shortening the season, is another means by Adam Silver and the NBA office for consideration to once again appease players who, quite frankly, don't need to be appeased any more than they already have been.
I have a lot to say. I'm
sure
I don't even know where to start. I've taken tons of notes. Let's just start with the adjective you used, appeasing players. First of all, players haven't come out and spoken on this matter, so I'm probably one of the first to speak on it. Adam was asked a question. He addressed the question. Obviously, collective bargaining, there's a lot that's going to go on. There's a lot of discussions that are to be had. But from the players' side, I think obviously my job is to do what's best for the players, to protect the better interest of the players, while also protecting the integrity of the game. You talked about the history of the game. These are all things that we've discussed. But there's a rule of thumb here. You have to adapt or you die. Once upon a time, there wasn't a three-point line, as JJ talked about. He's referred to certain players as plumbers or garbage men.
They did have second jobs.
Dentists or doctors. There was a time in which players had second jobs. I actually have a second job now at ESPN, but I'm fortunate to be in a different position, and I'm thankful for that. But the game has evolved. The way the game is played has evolved. The TV licensing deals have evolved. We're sitting here talking about sports right now. There's millions of people watching, and there will be millions of people watching Game 3 in Boston for a reason. Players deserve 7 figures, 8 figures, 9. Some deserve 10. LeBron's a billionaire for a reason. I think the issue here and what we have to address and figure out is what's best for the game. Obviously, there's financial implications. There's a revenue situation that we have to figure out. What's best for the governors, what's best for the players, and what's the happy medium. But to say that this rule is appeasing players is blasphemy, because there's a lot of players that just want to play 82 games. They want to protect the identity of the league, the history of the league, and we have to figure out collectively as a whole what's best for us. But all these things are just being discussed right now. There's no definitive plan of action. I know you guys have discussed 58 games. I'm sure there's a happy medium. Me as a player personally, I want to do what's best to protect the interests of us, whatever that looks like. And I'll vote on behalf of players similar to how I have in the past. I voted against the bubble, but I end up going anyway. I may vote for this or against this, but I will do whatever 51% of the population wants to do in our league. And I think we have to stop assuming that this is for the players. How do we not know this is for the league as a whole, to make the game better? JJ talked about ways to make games matter, ways to make games count. The last thing I'll say is, talked about healthy players sitting out. There's this misconception, if you will, that players just choose to sit out games. JJ played in the league a long time. How often did your staff tell you, JJ, this is a designated rest day?
I'd fight him on it.
He would fight him on it.
There's a lot of guys that do fight the teams on it.
Full disclosure here, I played in Portland for a long time with Damian Lillard. Everybody knows that. There was times where we'd go through the calendar and we would be supposed to pick rest days. And Dame and I would look at each other and we would go through designated rest days, right? Back to back, 4 and 5, 5 and 7, whatever the case may be. We would agree to sit games. The game would come up on the schedule. I would look at Dame, he would look at me. I would say, I'm playing tonight. You playing tonight? He'd be like, yeah. We would laugh about it because in reality, we sit those games and people think we're sitting healthy. When in reality, the team's job is to protect that 8-figure, 9-figure endorsement. And the way to protect that is to shield us from games where it's considered high risk of injury.
Running hot. That's what this is.
All right, hold on.
Stephen A., before you jump in really quick, let me just say this. We have 90 seconds, and they are all back tomorrow, and we're definitely going to revisit this because this is extremely interesting. You've got 90 seconds to talk.
We are damn sure revisiting this because, first of all, let me say for the record, there's not a single thing that I said that is blasphemy, CJ, with all due respect. Not a single thing. That's number one. Number two, I have repeatedly stated, JJ Redick, you participate on this show, you've watched the show. I've brought up on numerous occasions how it's not always the player. There are times that players want to play. I've had numerous players come to me and say, Stephen A., I need you to call the team out because it's not always us. Sometimes these guys come to us and they insist from the top down, we're not playing a particular night. We're not playing a particular game because they don't want us out there because they want to protect their investment and we're fighting for them to be on the court ourselves. I've brought that up in defense of the players on numerous occasions. But in the same breath, and I also pointed out, CJ, how it's not all, it's not most, it's not even a majority. It might be a small minority, but you know that small minority can taint things for the players. I don't have to bring up any names today. I'll wait until I'm well rested and in studio with y'all tomorrow to bring it up then. But make no mistake about it, the actions of the few can taint the many, particularly at the collective bargaining table, which you are fully aware of because it's something that you have to fight. And also, last but not least, we know that the National Basketball Association might take certain positions, but we also know that things are not always stated for the record. So just because a player hasn't come out and said anything publicly doesn't mean that it is not so. You know, quotes are given off the record all the time.
We're up against it, and we are definitely going to revisit this tomorrow. CJ and JJ will both be back. All right.